Alrighty, so yesterday, here's our book, Runaway Ralph by Beverly Cleary. Yesterday, Ralph had a new visitor slash friend move in next to him in a bigger cage. And remember, he had long, curvy teeth. So he said to him, who are you? What are you? Some kind of fancy gopher? The animal spat a green pellet out of his cage before he shot Ralph a withering look of scorn. Fancy gopher indeed, he sniffed. Well, Ralph faltered, I didn't know. You can't blame me for asking. I am a hamster, said the animal. A golden hamster. I am clean, odorless, and alert. You don't look gold to me, said Ralph. You look tan and hairy. At that response, the hamster turned his back on the mouse. Ralph nibbled a kernel of corn before he made up his mind to try again. Pretty nice place we have here, he remarked. Plenty of food and water and interesting things to watch. The hamster climbed on his exercise wheel and he started swinging to and fro while he stared at Ralph. When Chum remained silent, Ralph continued, It's safe from the cat too. Chum appeared never to blink his eyes. Maybe, he said. Ralph's whiskers trembled. That one word spoken by the hamster hinted at evils unknown to Ralph. Here was an animal who was wise in the ways of the world. Well, go on, thought Ralph impatiently. Tell me more. Chum was silent. Finally, Ralph was forced to say, How come that girl brought you here to Happy Acres? It's a long story, said Chum. I'm not in any hurry, said Ralph. Go. Chum spat the hull of a sunflower seed into the bottom of his cage. I was one of 13 hamsters, 6 girls, and 7 boys, born in the back room of a pet store. 13, said Ralph. That's bigger than my litter. What was it like living in a pet store? We had a happy, carefree childhood there in the cage of the back room, Chum continued. There was plenty of food and water and fresh cedar shavings in the bottom of the cage. We slept all day, all 13 of us, in a warm and cozy heap. Then at night, as we grew older, we would play. Oh, the fun we had those nights in the pet shop. Chum paused, a faraway look in his eyes. Go on, urged Ralph. Where was I, said Ralph. Oh, yes. The frolics we had at night, and then, Chum's voice shook with emotion. Ralph waited quietly until the hamster was able to continue. One day, I was sound asleep in the corner of the cage. By then we had grown a lot, and I was at the bottom of the heap. But I didn't feel squashed. I felt safe and cozy there beneath my brothers and sisters, when suddenly Chum stopped, unable to go on. Don't stop now, pleaded Ralph. What happened? A great human hand, a hand that smelled like a dog, Ralph shuddered, reached in and picked up several of my brothers and sisters. Let me tell you, that woke us all up in a hurry. We were terrified. We scrambled around, trying to hide behind our mother, under the wheel, in some cedar shavings, any place. I was slower than the rest because, you see, I was cramped from being slept on by my brothers and sisters, and the hand with that terrible dog smell got me. It didn't matter. The hand got all of us youngsters and turned us upside down in a most undignified fashion, and then we were put into 2 cages. Boys in one and girls in another. What for? Asked Ralph. Don't rush me, said Chum, picking up another sunflower seed in his paws and cracking it with his teeth. When he had eaten the kernels, he continued, Let me tell you, it was a terrible shock. Shortly after the doggy hand picked up our cage and loaded it into what was called a station wagon. I know, Ralph was eager to show his knowledge. I used to see them in the parking lot of the hotel. They were always full of children and luggage and sometimes a dog or 2. Chum ignored the interruption. We soon found ours was not the only cage to go into the station wagon. Our sisters were loaded in beside us, along with a box of turtles, a cage of rather downhearted canaries, 2 large cages, one containing puppies and the other some very silly kittens. Oh, yes, and a cage of white mice. White mice? Said Ralph scornfully. Anybody, not just owls, could see a white mice in the dark. Then a man with a doggy-smelling hand climbed into the front seat of his wife, and we were off. Where to? Asked Ralph. The county fair, answered Chum. It was a terrible trip. Kittens mewed, puppies whimpered, turtles scrabbled around in their box. What's a county fair? Asked Ralph. "A noisy place," said Chum. "It's full of people yelling, children laughing, and shrieking machinery that whirls and spins and plays music, and all sorts of animals that neigh and moo and baa." It was hot and dusty, and our cages were set out in a booth. By that time we were exhausted. It had been light for several hours, and we hadn't had a wink of sleep. "I know what you mean," Ralph said with feeling. That was only the beginning. A steady stream of people, mostly children, passed our cages. Big, little, most of them sticky, and all of them noisy. "Look, Mommy, Daddy, look at the darling little hamsters. I want one, Daddy. Buy me a hamster." All morning long, parents were better. "Don't be silly. Of course you can't have a hamster. You didn't take care of the last hamster you had. Come on. We don't have time to look at the hamsters." The whole busload of children, all of them wearing white shirts with letters across the front. "Camp T-shirts," interrupted Ralph, knowledgeable. "From Happy Acres." They came crowding around the booth. They didn't have any parents with them, so they bought pets. "You?" said Ralph. "Me," said Chum. "I was bought by that grubby girl with freckles. To make a long story short, the dog hand stuffed me into a hot little cardboard box with a few so-called air holes poked into it, and I spent the rest of the day being jounced around, peeked at, and fed bits of caramel corn." He got bought at a fair. "Sounds good," said Ralph, maybe to a mouse. There was a touch of scorn in Chum's voice. We rode in a bus to the camp, where a counselor put together a makeshift cage of a bucket with a piece of screen bent over the top. After a few days, the girl's family arrived. There was quite a fuss when the parents saw that their daughter owned a hamster, but her two little brothers set up such a howl that once more I was stuffed into a box with so-called air holes, and after more bouncing and jouncing, I arrived at the family's house, where I was put in this cage where I have lived ever since. Poked at with pencils, with those children's horrible little friends, fed hamster food full of nasty little alfalfa pellets that I keep shoving into my cage. Out of my cage, I'm sorry. You'd think they would catch on after a while, but no, they just keep feeding me food mixed with alfalfa. The worst part of my life is that I never get a full day's sleep. Someone's always moving the cage to dust, rattling something against the bars, rumbling along with the vacuum cleaner, practicing violin. It's not an easy life, I tell you. "But how did you get back to camp?" Ralph wanted to know. Last year, when Lana was packing her duffel bag for camp, her mother said that since the people who ran the camp let her buy me, they could put up with me for 2 weeks. She was tired of reminding Lana to feed me and clean my cage, and she wanted a vacation herself. She said the same thing this year, so here I am at camp for the 3rd time. Oh well, at least it's a change, and nobody runs a vacuum cleaner or practices the violin near my cage. Ralph was silent. Chum had given him a lot to think about. Like Chum, he sat swinging to and fro on his wheel, swinging and thinking. And he thought, and something caught his eye. It was the striped forepaw of Catso reaching through the hole in the rusty screen door. Ralph watched with fascination. The screen bulged from the pressure of Catso's shoulder and his paw groping and searching. The rusted screen stretched, and the evil paw with the claws unsheathed reached farther into the craft shop. "Where is Sam?" thought Ralph in terror. "Why isn't the watchdog watching?" The paw withdrew, and Catso's face pressed into the hole. His evil green eyes searched the craft shop. Ralph shrank into a ball in the farthest corner of his cage until he heard a short bark from Sam and summoned his courage to look around. Catso was gone, but the hole in the screen remained. So there he is, working his way through the screen. What do you think he's going to try and do? All right, so on Monday, we'll start chapter 5, The Personal Mouse. Spelled wrong. Both of those things are spelled wrong. So I hope you had a good day, catched up on NTI, and are all caught up, ready to start another week next week. And we've let's see, what week are we on? I've even lost track. But have a great weekend off, and take time to do some reading, just if you do, and hopefully we'll have some weather that's nice too. So we'll see you Monday. Love you guys.